think we're on. So, Harsh, first of all, really nice to have you here. My team was um, all about that. Let's get Harsh. They have got to know about you, and they were like, okay, there is someone who is doing really, really great things, and yeah, if we could gain out of the experience, and lots of other people who could gain out of what you're doing would be really great. So we can start off with your role right now, what you're doing right now, and we can move on further with that. You can let us know what you're doing right now.
Sure, Sanchit, and thank you so much for having me here. Excited to be on this podcast. Um, yeah, surely I can talk about my role. So I am currently an innovation program lead at Google, and that what that means is that I'm working on building and scaling an innovation program for key Google clients and customers. I work in Google Cloud, which is a B2B company, and our
Mhm.
key customers are some of the largest organizations across the world.
Great. So, you know, for people who are like coming into design and all those things, they'll be inspired to know what you're doing. So when we talk about innovation is innovation, like, how do we do things? You mean innovation in design, or do you mean innovation where it's design led, but ultimately developers are going to work on it alongside you that, okay, maybe this is possible, maybe this is not, and all those things. How do you how do we see that, how you mentioned that you're working with some really large customers, um really large clients, and how do you lead that? How does that work? How do you innovate? Maybe we want to know the process that you're doing.
Yeah. So when I say innovation, and in my context, in the context of my work and my background, I'm talking about design-led innovation. And what design-led innovation means, which is we can also call it desirability-led innovation or human-centered innovation. These are all the same, different names of the same thing. And what that means is that you use design process to come up with innovation strategies, business strategies, product, services, experiences. So depending on where our customers are, where our clients are, where our stakeholders are, we help them understand the key stakeholders that they are working for or the key users that they are building for, and then help them build whatever they are building. So it could be, say, a digital product. It could be also an organizational change problem. So it doesn't matter the type and size of problem. We can use a human-centered or desirability lens to innovate in that domain. That's what I mean when I say design-led innovation. Now, as I said, it can take many different directions. So with my
Mhm.
current role, a lot of companies come to Google for digital transformation. And in digital transformation, there are a lot of different aspects to it. Um, Often it's about the product that they are trying to build. Often it's about the platform that they are trying to build, and that's what I help them imagine, ideate, and solve for. I would say that this role doesn't only apply to these situations, it applies to other companies, other industries as well. And I've done it in a completely different environment, completely different industry before Google.
That's great. Great to hear that. So in a way, uh, you lead most of the innovations that are happening with Google Cloud, right? Um, for the clients, right?
I would not say that. It's always a
A
big
team.
deal. Google Cloud is a huge organization. I'm a part of it. Yes.
Okay. Um, yeah, in a way, you're helping Google's clients, some really, really nice clients to know who their customers and what exactly those customers need and what do they think. Uh, how do how do they see things when they want to use something? So, just for example, if hypothetically I don't know who the clients are, But hypothetically, if there is this logistics company, maybe FedEx, who is Google Cloud's client, and how FedEx team is going to use it, how they're going to um, how their company's future or present, what they're doing is based on, how they can disrupt the industry which they are in. They'll come to you, they'll look for you, they'll look for your feedbacks, your consultations, and your team would let them know that, this is how people are using it, this is the way that they're using it, this is the way your team is going to use it, and then you go on and do things together, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think you summarized it perfectly. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll say, yeah, the imaginary logistics company that who can be a client for Google. Yeah, that's how we help them. We do a lot of different activities, including workshops, projects, to help them understand the landscape, understand the digital transformation journey, understand what's out there in terms of technology trends, inspirations, and then work together in achieving some of those goals.
Amazing. um, Before we move further, I want to know how did you come into this? How did you come into design? What was when you found your love towards doing something which is changing the world? It's design for me is improvising, always becoming better than the previous version. Um, it's uh, it's much more practical, on what the things which I do, and at times it's highly data driven as well. um, but it's almost always about improvising on the previous level. How did you what's your journey? How did you find love for this, what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And when I look back, I realized that I was a designer long before I came into the field of design. Uh,
Nice.
I was always like, even when I think about my childhood, I was always thinking about the change that you mentioned, like
Hmm.
whether it was a product and or whether it was say an experience, or whether it was a building, or whether it was some software that I was working on. And I remember when I was kid, when I got my first computer. It was a Windows 98 computer.
Which year was this, when you go to Windows 98?
Sorry, say that again.
I was like, which year was this? It might
Oh,
have been
which?
like long back.
Yeah, yeah, it was long back. I think Windows 98 was when 2003, 4. I think that's where when I got my first computer.
Okay.
Computers were not so common in Indian households back then. So yeah, so when I got my first computer, Windows 98, I I was spending so much time designing how my desktop looks, um, and how it functions, the taskbar, etc. And I did not understand much, but I spent a lot of time on that. And that's what I think instilled a love for UI design. I wouldn't call it UX, but at least you're changing themes stuff. It's very superficial UI design. So, and I was doing it way before I actually got into UI UX.
Hmm.
Um, and my journey was not a straight path. So all these things stayed. I used to think about design, etc. But when I went to my undergrad or bachelor's, I got into architecture. And architectural design is a very, very vast field. It teaches you a
Right.
lot in terms of um, spatial design, user experience, and even a lot of skill sets in terms of what software you are using, the way that you design, all of that. So I gained a lot of skills over there. And then I also loved UI UX design from beforehand. So using those skills, I also started doing UX design on the side. So by the time I graduated, I was um, doing a lot of different types of design. I was doing branding, I was doing um, UX, I was doing architectural design because I loved that as well. So I started my own studio, started working on own with my partner, and then we ran that for a few years. I also collaborated with a lot of startups during that time, and that's kind of what my journey to design was. And eventually I moved into design-led innovation, research and strategy. um,
That's
that's
amazing. Yeah, that's a lot. I think, you're a designer by, your heart, your mind. It's in you. Even you went into architecture where you even have to know about materials, and how do different materials react with each other, and how do they amalgamate and do something great. um, do you still do something in architecture? Do you still by side at times find things for it, make something?
I would say that I'm definitely an architecture enthusiast and I'll remain that. So ever since I came to US, I make sure that I find out what are the famous buildings by famous architects at the places that I'm visiting, and I make sure that I go there and see all the buildings that we read about uh, when we were back in school. So that is still in me. In terms of whether I do projects or not, not so much. So see, in any design field, you have to stay relevant. You have to keep getting your hands dirty to be able to contribute as an active designer. And I don't think I have done that for a while in architecture. Would I be able to design some architectural concepts? Definitely. Because there,
Right.
when you think, when you think about user experience, there are certain tools in the field of design, certain frameworks that are universal. You could apply those same frameworks in designing a building as well as designing an app or a service. So I would love to. It's just that my current role or recent roles have not been in that domain.
Great. No, I meant it from a perspective that at times when you're a bit free, you would want to think that, what about I make the building in front of me really fun? I do something. So I meant more as an enthusiast, as a hobbyist.
Of
Of course,
course.
because the role that you have is takes a lot of energy,
Yeah.
and as you mentioned, getting your hands dirty. Speaking of which, how do you find good experience? Is it lots of psychographic analysis, lots of understanding how people use a particular stuff, how what they are thinking, and all those things? I'm saying it from a view of point that at times we have found that when we have to make a platform or an app or a design, especially for an app, if there is something which truckers are going to use, they have large hands. So we'll put like one or two things in one area, and they can just click on that, because they don't have much. They have a larger thumb, and at the same time, you can put a lot of things when women are shopping, because of their finger size or thumb size.
Right.
We've finding things like that, finding stuff like that. How do you do? How did you do lots of user experience, and what exactly was your process and your team's process? How do you go into things?
Yeah. Um, so when we have any problem that we are trying to solve for, I think one important thing is really take a step back and think about the context of that problem and understand the problem thoroughly before getting into some sort of solutioning. And that has its own methodology. Everybody uses different means to educate themselves around the context. It could be secondary studies, it could be surveys, it could be primary research, it could be um, talking to people, which is a part of primary research as well. Once you understand the context of the problem, once you are confident that you have framed the problem right, once you're confident that you're solving for the right problem, I think that's when we start into ideation and solutioning. So, and when we start doing that, then we need inspiration again, and a lot of different ways, a lot of different methodologies people use here as well. Um, I think looking for trends is definitely one way. Looking for inspiration in um, similar context, what people have done before, what has worked, what has not worked, all those studies come into place. But I think in the types of example that you mentioned, I think one of the biggest thing that helps you is observing people, going out there, seeing what they are doing, what
Right.
how they are interacting with things. And it's same whether it is a building that you're building, or whether it's the same whether it's a plaza that you want to design, or an app that somebody is going to be using during their day job. um, I think that
Mhm.
really helps, like primary research, observation and interviews are two very common methodology. I'm not saying that I'm the only one who uses it, but it is definitely very helpful.
Nice. Do you think intuition also comes into play? Do you have that designer's intuition or team uses intuition like up to some percent that, okay, what if I was this person? How would I use it? Do you get into play it as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, because when I came into the field of design at first, I was huge about intuition and designers' way of doing things, as some people call it, or designers' intuition, like you said it. So let's talk about intuition for a second. When we think about intuition, we think that it is something that's coming inherently because of the way we are. Sure, there's some personality to that. But one of my professors in early days, I had this discussion with him. So there are two types of designers in the world. One who believe that design intuition is what drives them. One who believe that design process can be taught to anybody and they can be a designer.
Hmm.
Um, I would like to slot in between them. And I think that was the outcome of my discussion with my professor. His name is Anija Matthew. He is the Dean of Institute of Design in Chicago. Um, and he talks about informed intuition. Um, and what that is, that as you live your life, as you learn different things in your everyday life, you develop this intuition based on all these things that you have seen, that you have read, that you have experienced. And this informed intuition is going to shape the things that you are solving for, the things that you are designing. So that if that is the definition of intuition, definitely. And intuition is, I would like to believe, is somewhat subconscious. Intuition is that you are thinking, oh, this might be a right approach to design this product or some whatever you are designing. This might be the right way. Um, but where is that coming from? We were not born with it. There have been life experiences ever since we were a kid that we might not even remember, but we know what the experience of certain ways are. For example, material, right? Maybe we are designing a phone and we say that, oh, you know what, aluminium. My intuition is aluminium might be good type of fit. There might be studies which show that, but somebody might say, "Oh, my intuition says that aluminum is the right fit." Um, they might say it's their intuition, but do you really think that they might have so much knowledge about that material just by interacting with it throughout their lifetime, which is coming subconsciously? And this was a very bad example of informed intuition. I'm sure there are great ones that I can come up with, that you can come up with, but that's what it is, if it makes sense.
It does exactly. It's a good example, but yeah, I think there is a third type as well. You mentioned two types. There are many people who are like data driven nowadays. They're highly like, give me a data. If data shows this, I'm gonna move in this direction. Uh, However, I sometimes feel, it has to be like perfect amalgamation. If intuition is not there, people could not build really great products, because that's how innovation comes in. I remember that, once we were making an e-commerce website, it was, there were like cards there, with thumbnails of the products. And when we were using it looked really beautiful, by the way. It looked, I could just look at it and I would just love, the design, when we would see the clothes, how they're coming, even on the cards, we can scroll and look at things. However, there was one thing which was a bit problematic, our designer, she was working on it. Her name is Pratiksha, and she was working on it. And I just when I was using a mouse, I was like, there is some kind of thing that, I'm looking at the left side. However, I have to book it. I have to move to a very weird right. So my hand was moving like this. So I was like, Pratiksha, maybe this is something. It's I have to move my hand like this, and it's uncomfortable. So we have to make it comfortable so that my eye and hand coordination has to be perfect. And ultimately, we found that. So I think it was intuition as well, that looking at it, maybe there is something which is not there, or connect. So yeah, I think you mentioned it perfectly, that it matters a lot to innovate something. At the same time, what about curiosity? I think anyone who has to become really great in this field has to be like really really curious. um, do you think, yeah, I think user experience designers, or maybe product designers, are highly curious people, right at the start, when products are being built. Like, maybe you have been inspired by products from Brown as well, Dieter Hans, and his field of products, that he really really made. um, I remembered one thing from one of the interviews I looked at it. Just like you, he mentioned that he really wanted to improvise on everything that he looked at. You also mentioned the same thing. And that's in many people, between user experience designers, the people who make really great products, uh,
Yes.
as you're doing right now. And it's the same thing. They're highly curious. They want to look at it and say that, okay, now how can I make it better?
Right.
What people were thinking when they were making it, and
Yep.
what I can think and make it better.
Yes.
How do you and your team work with curiosity?
I can talk about myself because that's consistent in my work. Um, so if I'm working alone, I think there are so many different facets of um, or so many different ways to consume information today, right? Um,
Exactly.
right from books, research papers, uh, online content is huge. Um, that's how I would say I satiate my curiosity. But if you think about inspiration, inspiration is out there in the world,
Everywhere.
in form of art, in the form of nature. Um, I think inspiration is out there, and in terms of, if you would ask me, how what's my process um, to get inspired? I think whenever I feel really stuck, I take a very long walk, 5 to 8 kilometers.
Hmm. Hmm.
I have some people get their ideas in showers. Um, I get
Some in
my
sleep.
Some in sleep, right? In dreams.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to get that. I don't know. That's a superpower to solve a problem in your dreams. Um, but I do take long walks, and I think there's some sort of chemical that's released when you are doing some physical activity, dopamine, and I don't know. I might be wrong. Some chemical that is triggered in your brain. So I think that's what works for me. I get inspired. And in terms of satiating my curiosity, there are so many domains that can help you out. I think for me, um, I I keep coming back to my company, Google search, and now we can also learn from these large language models that are powering ChatGPT and you know Google Bard, etc. Um, I do want to say that whenever as designers we are learning something, it's really important to be able to cite a trusted source. So I also, if I like something, I make sure that it's cited somewhere or it's proven in a research paper. So that's one point I would also like to make.
Um, okay, that's a really interesting one. Do you, can you give me an example, what exactly you found and you you cited it from a paper or something like that?
Yeah. Um, so there's a presentation coming up on artificial intelligence that I have to give, and I was designing the presentation, and this might not be directly related to a product or a service design, but situation is similar. I was designing that presentation, and I had to talk about history of AI. Now, I can go and do a search on Google, and I can go to Wikipedia or some articles to just pick that up. But to be able to say that all that information that I'm putting on my presentation that's factually correct, you have to do research. So you have to go and make sure that the information is consistent. You have to see where that information is coming from, where it is cited before. Um, and it takes time. It's not just like opening a few links. It takes time for you to look at the source, follow the trail of that information, and see if it is factually correct. That's one way, and this is part of the secondary research that many designers do. Where this is applicable in the field of design, or where have I done it otherwise as well? I do it in almost actually all of my project. I have done this most in where I was designing healthcare experiences.
Hmm.
So healthcare is a very you know tight domain in terms of
Yeah,
you cannot be basing your ideas on what you think. You have to really prove them, or you have to really cite the materials where they have been proven before.
you have
Um,
to be absolutely correct.
exactly,
Absolutely correct. Yeah,
exactly. So that's what I meant.
yeah, great. Um, yeah, so in a way also that, how do you cite things is that, um, do you look for like the first ones who did something? So just for an example, if I can learn out of what you mentioned right now is that if I'm gonna make something which is for evolution, how evolution come into place. I would, there are many amazing authors, who have come up with amazing things. But I would cite first from Charles Darwin
Yeah.
because no one before him did anything.
Okay.
So do you go to that level or do you like read the new ones, or maybe it depends on the thing that you're making. Maybe the first first versions were not that important. So how do you look at it?
I If I had an opportunity every time, I would do a PhD on in like if I'm designing something for evolution, I would have done a PhD to be able to that knowledgeable, to be that confident, that my product is right. But then testing is also a way that you can do that. Um, But the short answer would be yes, it would be a great idea to look at the spectrum of what were the first learnings, what were the first ideas in the domain, and then all the way to what has been the latest and the greatest. And like I said, every time we are designing, we cannot do a PhD, but it is a really good idea to have the context of that, journey of that evolution, to be able to design something that is new, that is novel, that can be truly called an innovation in that domain. And there are two um, benefits of doing that. One benefit is that you are factually correct, right? That your solution is based on a lot of learnings that many people have uh, done before. The
Hmm.
other one is that and this has happened to me in my early design days, that I would think that I'm not going to see anything that has been done before. I am going to come up with something entirely new, and I would, lock myself in a room. I'm trying to remember my architecture days. So I would lock myself in the room, work all night on a concept. And this was not even when I was working. This was back in architecture schools. I think my first, second year. I would come up with a concept and I would be like, oh my God, this is such a novel concept. I'm sure nobody has thought about this before. I would go to class next day, and either two or three other people would have come up with something very similar, or um, I would later in the day hear from my professor, and they would say, "Did you copy your design from somewhere? Because this is the exact same thing that has been done before." So, long story short, is that as designers, we should not waste time, or as any professional, we should not be wasting time in reinventing the wheel, as they say it. So, having that knowledge of on what has been done before really helps you not reinvent the wheel and really innovate in the domain.
Right. If you could build on those wheels and make bigger wheels, it would be really great.
Make
So yeah,
better wheels.
exactly. So in your process, you go to walks and you remember all these things that maybe have happened before when you're out, when you're walking, and maybe you're able to connect some dots in that, which is driving for me. When I drive, I connect the dots. So it's different for different people. How they connect the dots. Um, yeah. How do you mentioned how do you handle everything? How do you handle pressure at times? Many designers at times they get designer block and they have a pressure of completing something. Um, I've seen many designers going through that. Okay, they've got a block. They had an amazing idea. They were making something, but they lost that flow. That flow that was like really, really important. And for you, it's walk. But yeah, what else? How do you handle pressure like that?
Yeah, that works is definitely a way to feel better and connect the dots, like you said, and try to think of alternate ways when solving a problem and deal with pressure personally. The other way to handle pressure, and let's think about, when are we pressured? When we feel pressured when we are facing a certain problem and we are at lack of solutions. We don't know what would work, what wouldn't work. We might have a designer's block, like you said, or there might be other circumstances that are causing certain problems in the activity that we are trying to do, whether it is professional or personal, whether it is work or life. So, how do I handle that? One thing that I really believe in is that, um, believe in, and I also practice, is that I go and talk to people. I talk to
Hmm.
different people in surrounding that circumstances to learn what's going on. And then I also talk to people who are outside that circumstance for a third person perspective. There might be um, certain things that I'm looking at from like the elevation angle, but as a third person, if somebody looks at 1,000 feet view, the solution might be in front of them. So that is one way. I'm a huge believer of this old Airtel tagline uh, that came in, I don't know, maybe 10, 20 years ago. They used to say, "Baat karne se baat banti hai."
Right. I remember something like that
I,
vaguely.
I'm a huge
Yeah.
believer in that. Whether you are solving a problem, whatever you are doing, if you talk to people, I think that's a good way to solve problems. That's a good way to find problems, find solutions, and also handle pressure.
Yeah. Great way. Maybe we'll have to tell that to Russia and Ukraine as well. That we'll have to give them that ad. Okay. Um, yeah. It's great to talk things and find that block. Mentioning of it, how do you go into your flow state, like deep state, when you are in so much flow that all creative energies are perfect, and then you have aligned yourself, and work looks something like very simple to you, and everything comes to you very easily, and you're able to build something great. That really amazing flow state. Um, some people, want to seclude themselves. Some people want to sit in others, but put headphones on or do things like that. For me, it's none of the above. For me, it's like just I may be sitting with 100 people, but my head and my eyes are like um, focused on one thing only, and that's it. And my mind is somewhere, and it's flowing in that state. How do you find that flow state of doing amazing work? Most of your amazing works have come from there, I'm for sure.
I am. I used to be like that. I used to lock myself up, put headphones on, or put on some music, and you know, start thinking alone and start drawing or writing on paper and ideating and um, getting into building whatever I was designing. Um, I think things changed eventually. Now I get into really deep flow when I'm collaborating with people with my team. It doesn't have to be so many people. It could My team could be only one person as well. But collaboration is where I really find my flow, because I think it's a habit that I developed or acquired eventually, because then that's when the flow of ideas starts happening a lot, and then you can get real time feedback on your ideas. And I think collaboration has great power. um, Other than that, in terms of like when I'm working alone, then say if I'm working on something, some of my idea, then it's hard to stop and wait for a certain situation to arrive before I can start thinking about it. It's really hard to do that because of so many distractions. Um, so I am constantly thinking. If there's an idea I'm working on, I'm constantly thinking, and it's not a good thing, but that's how it works. Like you said, there might be 100 people in the room, but your eyes and your brain are focused on something. The same thing, very similar thing happens to me. I might be watching something on the TV, but I'm constantly thinking about problems and what solutions could be, and I try to capture it in real time, whether it is on my phone or whether it is on my laptop or a notebook. But that's when I'm working alone, and it's something personal. But whenever I'm working with people, I think that's where I find best of my flows.
Great, nice. Um, can you can you mention us something about what is that work that you're like really proud of? Maybe one thing that maybe you have built, which you can tell us, and you're like amazingly proud of it. That you believe that you have done amazing upgrades to the world or something like that. What exactly would be that?
It's hard to cite a work that I'm really proud of. Um, it's because I would believe that I mean, once you are done with the work, there is always an opportunity to improve it. And when you look back, you always think, oh, maybe that is how I could have done it better. I can tell you that about some of my recent works that I feel really fulfilled about. Um, um, my recent work with the automotive company that I used to work for. I was part of a strategy project, a future strategy project,
Hmm.
and we had to think about or strategize about certain brands in that company. And we really put a lot of effort in what I was mentioning earlier in the call in understanding the context of that problem. It was like, if you look at it from one perspective, it seems to be a very simple problem. But when you start diving deeper and deeper, when you do a lot of research, you understand the users, it's a generational shift that we are talking about. It's a disruption in the industry that we are talking about. And I think as a team, we were able to really capture a lot of those dimensions and then come up with ideas, solutions, strategies around that product line. And I'm definitely, I feel very fulfilled when I think about that work. The other one is my work at Google. So my work at Google has mostly been coming up with this innovation program that we offer to our key customers and clients. Um, and that has utilized a lot of skill sets that I have developed over the years and also taught me a lot of different things. So that is building and scaling that innovation program and executing it with the customers and receiving the positive feedback on that program from our stakeholders, internal and external to the company. I think that is definitely something that makes me feel very fulfilled.
Okay. For us here, what exactly is a Google Innovation Program? Uh, and how did you scale it? It's very important for us to know, like, how do you scale it? How do you scale something like that?
Yeah, that's scaling is always tough. Let me start by saying that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it is.
So it's not, I wouldn't say it's a Google innovation program. Certainly, it's an innovation program inside Google, but it was based on the idea of design thinking and how can we use design thinking to uncover the right problems to solve in the context of our customers' goals and their business goals, business vision, business strategy that they have. Um, so um, in short, we try our best to understand what their goals. We aim to understand their goals, where they are at, where their customers are at, where their stakeholders and internal teams are at, and then we present a point of view, and then we work together in a collaborative environment. Um, to come up with the right problems to solve for and the solutions for that problems. So in a nutshell, that is the program. But whatever I described is basically design thinking. Um, yeah, that's the innovation program that we run at Google.
Nice. Um, Mentorship. You have you. I see that you like giving, you're being mentored to few people. What does that mean to you? Do you like um, what exactly do you mentor? We would want to know if people would want to learn from you.
Yeah. So mentorship is definitely that I really, really believe in. And I believe in mentorship because of my own experiences.
Hmm.
Um, when I was trying to learn more about design, when I was trying to, you know, even settle in United States, it was a completely new country. I had never been here before. It was a completely new environment for me. I had a lot of mentors who helped me in my personal and professional journey um, throughout my life. Um, especially, I seeked a lot of mentorship when I came to United States. um, and I really saw the power. I really saw the growth that it gave me. um, and now I think I can give back to the community. I can give back to the students who are in their journey to achieve something in their career or solve problems in their career or in their lives. And that's why I really believe in it. I started doing mentorship a few years ago. I think right before pandemic, around 2019 time frame, and I've mentored a lot of students from India as well as United States and globally. And it is a very fulfilling journey to be a mentor as well. And it's not just a one-way journey. I learn a lot from my mentees as well.
Exactly.
Um, and in terms of what I can provide mentorship on, I can provide mentorship in design for starters. I can provide mentorship in career development and in general um, problems that we face in our lives and our journey.
Great. So if people have to come to you, if students have to come to you, they'll find
Yes.
you on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, right? Would be the right channel. They can come and approach you.
Yeah, yeah. LinkedIn is definitely the right channel. They can find me on ADP list as well. Um, but what I'm trying to do is like bring everything to LinkedIn. I'm in the process of setting up um, my public calendar right now. I have evaded from that for a long time. I don't think I can do that anymore. So I am planning to post that public calendar on LinkedIn as a link, and then students can just use that calendar to book time with me. I do advise one thing when any of us reach out for mentorship is to provide a little bit of introduction and context around what you're seeking mentorship on. That really helps mentors to gear their thinking towards what they're going to talk about.
Right. Exactly. People should come up with what exactly do they need out of you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a small context, a small write up of a context would help, and it doesn't have to be a essay, even 2 lines to it.
Yeah. Great. So people know that they could contact you on LinkedIn. Great. In the future that is coming up, how do you think design is going to evolve? Or do you foresee something which would be kind of a black swan event that's coming up? Maybe we're not going to use phones anymore. Maybe all of them would be in our wearables or something like that. Um, how do any wild guesses, or something, how do you perceive that how design is evolving in the future? What we'll be doing in the coming 5 years?
Oops, sorry about that. Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think I'll talk in terms of design. Don't want to predict any black swan event at this point because the world is changing so fast, and to be really honest, nobody can predict it. Predict the likely outcomes. If you have seen the progression of AI in the last few years and in recent times with generative AI coming into hands of all the non all the not so tech um, people as we would like to call them, um, everybody is using Gen AI today. Nobody would have imagined that a couple of years back. And
Exactly.
the technology or the concept on which uh, not the concept, let's say that the technological framework on which Gen AI is based on, like the Gen AI tools like ChatGPT and Bard, is called Transformers, which came only in 2017. And in 5 years, here we are. So technology is evolving so fast that it's hard to predict that kind of event. But I can definitely say there is going to be a huge impact on how we work, and specifically in design. So I'll just give one example. And this is in the domain of architecture, but it would apply to a
Mhm.
lot of different design fields as well. So when we used to do, or when architects develop a concept, they design some visual concepts which are not technically absolutely correct, but these are just concepts for inspiration that they get feedback on, and these are very early in the design phase. And I remember when I was working in architectural domain, it used to take a lot of time. You had to design of the concept. You have to actually design it in a 3D format or sketch it out. Uh, I think most people move to 3D and then render it. It used to take a lot of time, and I would imagine even today it would take you a couple of hours to do that. If you have used any generative AI imaging technology that is out there, it takes a few prompts to generate multiple examples in a matter of minutes.
Right.
That is going to happen in design in all facets, whether it is graphic design, UI design, whether it is user experience of design of digital products, whether it is frameworks, wireframes. And these are just some examples that I'm giving. Everything is going to be impacted from that. So then I think, what does that mean for designers? That means that we need to really reflect and think about that what is the difference between our talent and our skill set. Those two are very different things. Um, Being able to design something in 3D or make a frame is not my knowledge and my talent. Those are tools, those are skill sets. Then we need to think about what our talents are. Things like being able to think at scale, being able to really pinpoint user behaviors. These are the talent that we develop over time. These are the informed intuitions, as I talked about, that we developed over time. We need to think about that. What talent do we bring to table? And that's how we will be able to use the design tools of the future, which is an example of which is the generative AI tool that I just talked about, um, and utilize those tools along with our talent to be the designers of the future.
Exactly. You're so right about it. Because, even before generative AIs came, when we were in discussion last year, there were few people, I take lots of interviews. So few people would tell me that, okay, I know Figma, I know After Effects as well, I know Illustrator, I know this, I know that. I was like, anyone can learn the tool in just a matter of a week. It's not about tools, it's about your direction, that you are taking your design or your subject and you're moving into that direction.
Yeah,
So visionaries, or people who can think really deeply, are the ones who are going to run the world right now, more than like people who know lots of tools.
yeah,
So that dependency is going over, and and generative AI has given us that opportunity to look at it
yes.
and build better things. Um, I think you don't have much time right now. One last question would be great.
Yeah, sure. I
Uh,
just want to follow up with one other perspective of um, AI and design. Using tools or thinking about tools is great in terms of AI and our jobs in future, and how will we perform design in future. That's
mhm.
one aspect of it. The other aspect is what is our responsibility towards the future of design, or towards the future of how people work, and how AI is developed. We shouldn't be blindsided just by tools. We should be thinking about how do we make sure that decisions in regards to the development of AI that we are making, that are being made, are informed by the um, right mindset, right knowledge, and that's something that I also believe that designers can help with the talents, of course, not with skill sets. I mean, with
Exactly.
also, but yeah, designers have a responsibility towards that as well. But that was just a follow-up answer.
Exactly. That's great. So uh, I know that you're short on time, but just one last thing.
So,
before, which is, how do you design for different cultures? In your work experience, you might have um, come into this situation at times that maybe you're making something which would be used by two or three different cultures, and they look at things quite differently. Maybe it's in terms of colors, maybe it's in terms of how they are used to things. So in some nations, red is considered auspicious, but in some cultures, it's considered bad. So how do you handle that? How do you see cultural shifts? How do you work over that?
That's a great question. I think it's see people when they are deploying a product globally, and I'm just taking an example of a product in this context. It might be a brand or it might be a service. It could be a lot of different things, but where they are deploying a solution globally, the biggest mistake with even with the largest of organizations and biggest of companies, the biggest mistake that they can do is not understanding the cultural context. And that
Exactly.
and that is why I believe doing the primary and secondary, like starting with research, is so important. You have to start by understanding the people who live day to day in that context to be able to understand the right product fit or the right um, um, solution to deploy in that market. I think that is the biggest way. Um, and then the other notion, which is kind of attached to what I just said, is one size fits all. It really doesn't. It doesn't fit everybody. It's you have to reshape and resize your solution to be able to meet that cultural context. And that is why in the first place it's important to understand that cultural context. So what does that mean for us? That means that when we are developing a solution, we have to be not only informed, but we have to be flexible enough to develop versions of that product that would be um, fit for those different cultural contexts. It's not easy. It's hard. It requires more resources. It requires more money to be able to do that. But that is the right thing to do. It is not just cultures. It's also different sets of people, maybe in the same culture as well. Um, with everything with you know, actually, I'm not going to go into that, but you get what I'm saying. The users, the stakeholders, you have to understand them, and one size doesn't fit all. Um, so
Exactly.
that's I would approach this bit.
Exactly. Exactly. One last thing. Um, any world personalities, or any people, your mentors who have like influenced you, or who influence you. You really like their work, and you want to um, up their level. You want to become maybe better than them, or maybe personalities who have influenced you.
It's it's hard to name one personality because there have been so many in my journey. I
Mhm.
think the ones that have really made an impact in my journey are my mentors, the ones that have mentored me in my journey, and the people whom I go to for different circumstances and different problems, and they are all around me. They have the most impact, which includes my family, my partner, my teachers, professors, friends. Um, um, I try not look up to one specific personality in my life or one specific person, because, and this is my belief, because when you do that, you are trying to embody what they do, and you are trying to do what exactly they do, but their circumstances are different. You are not in their shoes, so it might not work for you. So it's a good idea to learn from many different people, um, and then implement that in your journey. That is why I refrain from naming any huge personality. Of course, I get inspired by things people do. I get excited by what they say, but I try to reframe from just thinking about one person, because that person might have flaws as well. So the biggest impact that I try to get is from the people who surround me every day.
That's really great. So yeah, that's the end of it. Thank you very much. You've given some really insightful things, and I think lots of people are gonna take take a lot of learning from that. So yeah, it has been really great, and I hope that we do it sometime later on as well. I know that you're in a hurry, with much more upgraded version when we talk much more details about how things work and this and that. Maybe in a couple of months, let's do that. Let's do that later on. So yeah, right, Harsh, really nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you, Sanchit, as well. And it was pleasure to be on this podcast. And I look forward to talking to you again, maybe when I'm in India or when you are in the States, and keep the conversation going. It was really
Yeah,
nice to be talking to you.
great, great, Harsh. I'll let you go. You have a call now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank,
bye.
thanks so much. Bye. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.